She called me on a Tuesday morning just after 8. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Sudbury with a mug of coffee going cold beside me, reading through the weekend paper the way I do when I have nowhere particular to be. Retired men find their rituals. That was mine. Her name was Loretta. She had coordinated my daughter's engagement party 3 weeks earlier, the one we'd held at the Ramada on Paris Street, the one I'd paid just over $11,000 for, including the catering and the open bar and the centerpieces my daughter had insisted on ordering from a florist in Toronto. I remembered Loretta as a composed woman, the kind who carries a clipboard and never seems flustered. She had been calm and professional the whole evening. She was not calm now. "Mr. Ashford," she said, "I need to ask you something before I say anything else. Is your daughter with you?" I told her no. My daughter lived 40 minutes away with her fiancé, a man named Brendan. Wait, no. A man I'd been trying to like for going on 3 years. "Good," Loretta said. She paused. "I need you to come in and see me. There's something I recorded that evening that I think you need to hear. Please don't mention this call to anyone in your family." I set down my mug. "What kind of something?" I asked. "The kind that I couldn't sleep over," she said. "Please, Mr. Ashford, come alone. My name is Warren Ashford. I'm 63 years old, and I live alone in the house my wife Doreen and I bought in 1991. Doreen passed 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. We had 2 children together. Our son Liam is 31 and lives in Calgary. He's an electrician, a good one, and he calls me every Sunday without fail. Our daughter Paige is 28. She's the one who had the engagement party. I want to be fair to Paige before I say anything else, because I love her. I have always loved her, the way you love someone you watched come into the world. But fairness requires honesty, and if I'm being honest, Paige has never quite understood the difference between her parents' money and her own. When she was in university at Laurentian, we paid her tuition. When she moved in with her first boyfriend, we helped with the damage deposit. When she got a parking ticket she didn't want to deal with, somehow that became my responsibility too. Doreen used to handle these things more gracefully than I could. She had a way of saying yes that didn't feel like surrender. After she died, I had to figure out my own way, and I haven't always managed it well. The engagement party was the largest check I had written since the funeral. Paige had come to me 8 months earlier with a number in mind. She showed me venues, catering menus, a guest list of 92 people. She said she and Dawson, her fiancé, were saving up for the wedding itself, and could I please help make this one thing happen? I said yes. I always say yes to Paige. Dawson, for his part, had never said much to me at all. He worked in real estate development, drove a leased Audi Q5, and had the kind of handshake that tells you everything. His family had money, or had had it, I was never quite clear, and they arrived at the party in matching Canada Goose jackets and didn't offer to pay for so much as a bottle of wine. But the party went well, from what I could see. Paige was radiant. People danced. I gave a short speech that got a few laughs. I went home before 11 because my knees were bothering me and the noise was starting to get ahead of me the way it does now that I'm older. Loretta had still been there when I left. I drove to her office 2 days after her call. She worked out of a small events coordination business on Lorne Street, a converted house with a sign out front that said Milestone Event Planning. She met me at the door. She brought me into a back room and poured me a coffee I didn't touch. She sat across from me with her hands folded, and I could see she'd been thinking about how to start. "I want to explain how this happened," she said. "I use a small recorder for my own notes. Nothing fancy, just a clip-on mic I wear on my lapel." After the main program finished that evening, I was walking through the back hallway near the private room where you had stored your coats and gifts. I wasn't trying to listen to anything. I was just passing through. She looked at me evenly. "Your daughter was in that room with her fiancé and his mother. They didn't know I was there." She placed a small digital recorder on the table between us. I want you to know that I debated this for 3 weeks, she said. I almost didn't call. But you paid for that evening, Mr. Ashford. You paid for all of it. And what I heard, I think you should know. She pressed play. The recording was imperfect. There was background noise, the muffled thrum of the party on the other side of the wall, but the voices were clear enough. I recognized Paige immediately, and Dawson's voice was unmistakable. That particular flat, confident tone he used when he thought he was being pragmatic. It was his mother's voice that surprised me most. She spoke quietly, but precisely, as though she had been thinking about what to say for a long time. The business is the key, Dawson's mother said. If your father adds you to the ownership structure before the wedding, the exposure stays with him and not with you as a couple. He's been resistant, Paige said. He doesn't like to talk about it. Then you need to change the framing, his mother said. It's not about control. It's about protecting what he built. Tell him you want to learn the business. Spend time there. Get your name on the letterhead. There was a pause. And the cottage? Paige asked. One thing at a time, Dawson said. The business first. Then we revisit the cottage as a wedding gift conversation. I sat in Loretta's office and I did not move. I heard my daughter say, "He'll do it if I ask at the right moment. He always does." And then I heard her laugh, a bright, easy laugh that I had known her whole life. Loretta stopped the recording. I want to tell you what it feels like to hear something like that, because I think people who haven't experienced it imagine it as a moment of hot rage. It isn't. At least it wasn't for me. It was more like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees very slowly, like something quietly left the building and didn't come back. I sat there for a while. Loretta didn't say anything. She was kind enough to let the silence be. Then I said, "Does anyone else have a copy of this?" "No," she said. "Only you now. What made you decide to call me?" She looked down at her hands. "I've worked enough events to know what family looks like when it's real and what it looks like when it's performance. You gave a speech that evening about your wife, about how proud she would have been." She stopped. "I have a father too, Mr. Ashford." I thanked her. I stood up and I shook her hand and I walked out to my truck. I sat in the parking lot on Lorne Street for 25 minutes before I started the engine. I need to back up a little, because the business she was talking about, my business, isn't some abstract number. It is the thing I built with my hands. I started Ashford Home Insulation in 1997 with a second-hand van, a line of credit from TD Bank, and a business license I got at the municipal office on a Thursday afternoon. I had been working for another insulation company for 7 years, and I knew the work, and more importantly, I knew the customers, and I believed, correctly as it turned out, that if I treated people honestly and showed up when I said I would, I could make something of it. I was right. By 2004, we had 4 crews working the Sudbury Basin and up toward Sault Ste. Marie. By 2010, I had 12 employees and a proper office, and Doreen was handling the books. We got the contract for 3 school board buildings in 2015, which was the year I understood we had genuinely made it. The business is worth something now. I don't like to put a number on it publicly, but my accountant, a man named Clifford who I've trusted for 20 years, valued it formally last spring at just under $4 million. That includes the vehicles and the equipment and the goodwill, which in a trade business like this is built almost entirely on my name and my reputation. Paige knows this. She has always known this. What she does not know is that Clifford also helped me set up a proper succession plan 18 months earlier. Nothing dramatic, just something sensible, the kind of thing your accountant tells you to do when you turn 62 and the business is real and you don't want to leave a mess behind. Liam was named in it because Liam had asked me once, quietly, whether I had a plan. Paige never asked. That night at home, I sat in the living room in the dark for a long time, not because I was dramatic about it, just because I didn't feel like turning the lights on. I thought about Doreen. She would have had something wise to say, I'm sure, but I've stopped imagining the things she might say because it started to feel like something I was doing to hurt myself. What I thought about instead was something much simpler. I thought about what I was actually going to do. I was not going to confront Paige. Not because I was afraid of the conversation, but because I understood, sitting there in the dark, that confronting her would only give her the opportunity to perform hurt, to cry and apologize and minimize and reframe, and then wait for me to say, "It's okay, sweetheart," the way I always have. That conversation would end with me feeling guilty. I was not going to do that. What I did the next morning was call Clifford. I told him I'd had a change of thinking about a few things. I didn't explain why. Clifford is too professional to ask for explanations when the instructions are clear. I asked him to walk me through the current structure of the succession plan, and I asked him what it would take to revise it. He told me. It was not complicated. I also called my lawyer, a woman named Elspeth, who had done Doreen's estate and who I trusted completely. I told her I wanted to make some changes to my will and that I wanted to review the ownership structure of the business to make sure that no one could be added to it without my explicit written instruction. She said she could have documents ready within the week. In the meantime, I did something I'm not entirely proud of, but that I think was necessary. I started paying attention. Paige called me the following Thursday. Normal call, normal tone, asking how I was, telling me about a furniture piece she and Dawson were looking at for the new apartment. Somewhere in the middle of it, she said very naturally that she had been thinking about maybe coming to spend a day at the office sometime, just to understand the business better. "You always said you wanted me to know how it worked, Dad." I had never said that. Not once. I said, "That sounds nice. Let's find a date after the holidays." "Of course," she said, warmly, easily. I sat with the phone in my hand after we hung up and I thought, there it is. 3 weeks ago she was laughing about when to ask. Now the ask was beginning quietly, wrapped in family language. "Dad, you always said." I wasn't angry anymore. I was just clear. Dawson called me himself about 10 days later. He didn't call often, once or twice a year, and usually only when Paige was standing beside him. This time he called from what sounded like his car, early on a Saturday morning. He wanted to take me for lunch, just the two of us. Get to know each other better before the wedding. "I think we've been a little formal with each other," he said, "and I'd like to change that." I said I appreciated that, and we set a date. Elspeth had already sent me the revised documents by then. I'd signed them and couriered them back. Clifford had restructured the business ownership into a holding trust, the terms of which could only be altered by me in writing, witnessed, and notarized. With 30 days' notice, Liam had been updated quietly in a phone call on a Sunday evening. He hadn't said much. Just, "Thanks for telling me, Dad. I'm sorry you had to deal with this." He didn't ask what had happened. Liam is like that. Dawson and I had lunch at a steakhouse on LaSalle Boulevard. He ordered a ribeye and a glass of Cabernet and was pleasant and attentive, and told me twice that Paige was lucky to have such a dedicated father. He asked about the business in what he probably thought was a casual way, just curiosity, just son-in-law interest. How many employees did I have now? Was I thinking about the long term? Had I considered bringing in a junior partner to manage operations as I got older? "A junior partner," I said. "Interesting thought. Just something to consider," he said easily. "Lots of family businesses benefit from fresh eyes." I nodded. I ate my baked potato. I asked him about his own work, which he talked about for the remainder of the meal. When the bill came, he reached for it. I thought, this is the gesture. This is the part where he establishes goodwill. I let him pay. I drove home and I sat in my chair by the window, the one that looks out over the backyard where Doreen used to have her garden, and I thought about the conversation, and I found I felt nothing in particular. The thing about being 63 is that you've seen enough of people to not be surprised by them. Disappointed, yes, but not surprised. The wedding is still planned for August. I haven't changed anything outwardly. I'm still listed as the father of the bride. I'll still walk my daughter down the aisle because she is my daughter and I love her in spite of everything, and because Doreen would have wanted me there. But certain things have changed. The cottage, the property on Whitefish Lake that Doreen and I bought in 2003, where we spent every Thanksgiving and most of July, is now in a family trust with my brother Keith as the trustee. Keith is 70 and in good health and has known our family his whole life. The trust specifies that the cottage may be used by either of my children during my lifetime, and after my death passes equally to them, but may not be sold or encumbered without unanimous consent of the trust. No one is getting the cottage as a wedding gift. The business is protected in the way Clifford described. I won't go into the technical details, but the short version is, no one's name is going on that letterhead without my signature on a document that I choose to sign. My will has been revised. Liam and Paige are still in it, equally, because I am not a petty man and whatever my daughter has done, she is still my daughter. But the executor is now Keith, not Paige, which had been the original arrangement. I did not tell Paige any of this. She asked me, about 6 weeks after the engagement party, whether I had ever thought about making her a partner in the business. She was careful about it, phrased it as concern, as love, as wanting to help carry the load as I got older. She said Dawson had some expertise that could be useful. She said she just wanted to protect what I had built. I listened to all of it. Then I said, I've actually been working on some of this with Clifford. Everything's sorted. You don't have to. Oh, she said. There was a pause. What does that mean exactly? It means I've got a good plan in place, I said. Clifford's been great. You'd like him. I changed the subject to her dress fitting, which was 2 weeks away, and she followed the pivot. She's smart, my daughter. She knew something had shifted. She just didn't know exactly what. Here's the thing no one tells you about a moment like this. The grief doesn't come from what your child did. It comes from having to see them clearly for the first time. I spent 28 years building a version of Paige in my head, a story about who she was, told with love, edited gently over the years to keep the story clean. She was my daughter. She was good. She had her mother's eyes and my stubbornness and a laugh that could fill a room. All of that is still true. And she sat in a back room at her engagement party and talked about me like I was an asset to be managed. Both of those things are true at the same time, and I have had to sit with that. I don't know whether this is about how I raised her. That's the question I keep returning to. Doreen and I gave her a lot, maybe too much. But I also know that at some point, the choices a grown person makes are their own. Paige is 28 years old. She's not a child I can correct anymore. She is an adult who decided that the most efficient path to what she and her new husband wanted ran directly through her aging father's trust, and she built a strategy around it. I think about Doreen, about whether she would have handled it differently. I think she would have confronted Paige, tearfully, over tea, and they would have cried together, and it would have been intense and unresolved, and Paige would have been forgiven by breakfast. Doreen forgave with an ease I always admired and never quite understood. I am not built that way. I forgive slowly, if at all, and I protect what I've built. Loretta sent me a card a few weeks after our meeting. A simple one, no message inside, just her name. I think she wanted to know I was all right. I wrote her a note back thanking her. I told her what I told her in the parking lot on Lorne Street, that what she did took integrity and that I wouldn't forget it. I meant it. Liam came to visit in November, which he doesn't always manage because Calgary is a long way and flights from YZ are not cheap even when you book ahead. We went to the Canadian on Elgin Street for dinner and then came back to the house and sat in the kitchen the way we used to. The three of us, before Doreen was gone and before everything got complicated. He didn't bring up Paige. I didn't either. We talked about hockey, which we've been doing since he was 9 years old, and I drank 1 beer, and he drank 2, and we watched the late news, and he went to bed in his old room, and I stood in the kitchen after he was gone, and felt for the first time in months something close to peace. The August wedding is 4 months away. I am still going. I bought a new suit, dark charcoal, which my sister says is appropriate and not too somber. I am going to stand up at that wedding and smile at my daughter in good faith, because my love for her is not conditional on her behavior, and because I understand now that love and boundaries are not opposites. I love Paige. I have put the things I've worked for beyond her reach, not to punish her, but to protect us both. If she never discovers the details of what I've done, things will go on as they are, slightly tense, slightly managed. If she does discover it, and she may, eventually, I will simply say that I worked with my advisors to get my affairs in order, as any responsible man my age should do, which is the truth. The rest, the recording, the back room, the conversation I was never supposed to hear, that I will keep to myself, not out of bitterness, out of something quieter than that. There is no version of this story that ends with my daughter thanking me. I understood that the moment I walked out of Loretta's office and sat in my truck in the cold air of an October morning in Sudbury, watching the leaves come off the birch trees in the parking lot. But there is a version where I keep what I built, protect the people who deserve protecting, and walk my daughter down the aisle in August with my head up and my affairs in order. That's the version I chose. I'm still choosing it.